Something in the Rain, also known as Pretty Nuna Who Buys Me Food. Nuna is a Korean word that can roughly be translated as older sister, but it's a term that can be used for somebody that you're just familiar with. It doesn't necessarily have to be used for somebody who's a blood relative. I gotta be honest with you guys, watching this show at times was really frustrating, and I almost didn't finish it, and I almost didn't make this review. But as frustrating as it got, it was also really fucking good. And I know that kind of sounds contradictory, but I will do my best to explain that with this review. I've seen such a polarizing range of opinions about this show on the internet. There are people who absolutely love it and think it's amazing, have nothing bad to say about it. And then there's people who couldn't even finish it, or did, and hated how it ended. After watching it myself, I know one thing for sure. It's one of the most emotionally provocative shows I've ever watched. And if you watch it, you will be unable to avoid having a strong opinion of your own. Let's do this. Something in the Rain is a Korean drama romance series, which you can find on Netflix, starring Son Ye-jin as Yoon Shi-na and Jung Hae-in as So Jun-hui. Here's the synopsis for you guys, as per usual. When a single career woman, Ji-na, reunites with her best friend's younger brother, Jun-hui, after he returns from 3 years of working abroad, their efforts to reconnect grow into romance. As you might expect from a romance drama, the entire series is based around the romantic saga of these two characters. That being said, do not underestimate this show after the first episode and think that's all there is to it. It explores a lot of interesting and relevant themes, such as sexual harassment in the workplace, classism, sexism, women in modern society, and the relationship between parents and children. They are all interconnected within the dynamic that these two characters have. They appear and function within the narrative as both external forces from the society around them and the internalized psychological effects of growing up in that society and under the different upbringings each character has had, both of which challenges and complicates their romance. Love and being in a relationship becomes a theme of its own in this show, and is explored in an impressively meticulous and realistic style. Both the two main characters in this show are far from perfect. They will most likely frustrate you at times. They will be annoying at times. And during the evolution of their relationship, there are more than a couple times where it becomes extremely unhealthy. The episodes are long. I'm talking like 15 episodes, each one being over an hour. So they're basically just like 15 movies. And they're structured in these kind of vignettes, which just adds to the sense of realism. It's like a never-ending thread. There are cliffhangers used at the end of some episodes, to be sure, but sometimes not at all. Sometimes it just keeps on going into a new scene or a new day in their lives. The cinematography is good. It's not mind-blowing, but it's effective and well executed. The music is, well, to be honest, I actually really didn't like the music at all. I found the main songs that the show uses to be pretty bland and unimaginative and cheesy, and yeah, I just didn't like them at all. But that's totally subjective. If you hear these songs when you start the show and you're like, wow, these are awesome, then you're in luck, because you're going to be hearing them over and over and over and over and over again. I guarantee you by the end of the show, whether you liked the songs or you hated them, it won't make a difference. You'll know all the words by heart. But the real strength of the show is the performance given by the two main actors. Not only do both of them give great performances, they also have an incredible chemistry with each other that makes their dynamic seem so genuine. And since the show invests so much of its aesthetic in realism, without this chemistry and level of acting, it honestly wouldn't have been anywhere near as good as it was. The other actors in the show give performances that are anywhere from serviceable to really strong in their own right. The show essentially constructs the development of these other characters based on how their lives are affected and changed by Ji-na and Jun-hui's relationship, or by their opinions of that relationship. And it's through this dynamic that all of the social commentary is also conveyed. Every character is affecting other characters in the show, while at the same time society is affecting all of them. Ji-na and Jun-hui's relationship becomes more and more complex and challenged as the show goes on, and And the show creates this dichotomy between their personal problems that they bring to their relationship that challenges it, and the external forces of society and other people that affect it as well. Every time their love has to endure some kind of obstacle, all these questions are always raised, because you're always having to think, wow, is this just because these two people are fucked up and selfish and don't know how to be together? Or is it all these external forces like classism, sexism, social norms, old school tradition that's really the culprit of why they're having so much trouble? And all the other characters in the show play their role in constructing this entire dynamic. This makes for a really interesting show that's a lot more nuanced than a lot of other romance dramas, where usually ancillary characters are just serving comedic roles or being quirky friends or annoying coworkers. And even though this show does have those kind of character archetypes, they're actually there for a reason. Now, I know there are going to be some of you out there that are like, yeah, I don't care about all the fancy, schmancy social commentary and deeper theme shit. I just want to know if this is a good romance show that I can get in my feels with. For those of you who are just here for the classic tropes, the super accessible and enjoyable idiosyncrasies of romantic dramas, fear not, because they are all there in healthy amount. There are romantic rivals, mind games, jealousy, pettiness, disaster, drama, squirming levels of cuteness, all that good shit. On this note, the way these two characters fall in love initially is so well done. It's a nice, slow burn, nothing is rushed, everything is built up perfectly so that even the first time they hold hands becomes a super satisfying payoff for the audience. Alright, so that's pretty much going to do it for my spoiler-free review. If you want to stick around for further analysis and my opinion on the ending and just in general me trying to sound smart for like 10 more minutes, feel free. If you haven't seen the show yet, then hopefully you're interested by now. And here's just a couple other things you need to know before you watch. First, like I said before, it is definitely true that this show isn't just about Ji-na and Junhui's romance. But if you are not invested and on board with following this couple through their journey after, let's say, 2 episodes, you might want to get off the ride. If you're going to watch this show, you need to be prepared to be the third wheel on a lot of dates. Large percentages of episodes are just Ji-na and Junhui being together and being in love, and there's a fair chance you might get sick of them. Look, I'm not saying you have to love everything they do to keep going, but you have to be okay with admitting to yourself that you can get frustrated with them or get sick of them at times. Otherwise, you might just go crazy. But the bottom line is you need to be at least invested enough to want to know what happens to them. Because honestly, sometimes it was my frustration or dislike of the way they acted that kept me watching, just to see how it all worked out. Second, the ending of this show has the potential to be extremely polarizing. You might love it, you might hate it, but if you want to find out what it is, you gotta watch the whole thing. So yeah, watch at your own risk. Let me be clear, this really has nothing to do with whether the ending is a happy one or not. It's more to do with how the ending fits with everything else that has happened leading up to it. And that's all I'll say for now. Alright, time to overanalyze the shit out of this. Ji-na and Junhui's relationship is established pretty early on in the show as being a kind of forbidden love. In the first few episodes, there's a lot of mention of the word taboo, which is mostly coming from Junhui when he's talking to Ji-na. He's really into advocating breaking taboos as well as encouraging her to break taboos. If we look at their relationship as a taboo and the many reasons it is, according to society, we can start to see the different ways in which their relationship is challenged, and how these challenges are both internal in nature regarding who they are as people and how they were raised, and external in the form of society, which constructs all of these social expectations that Ji-na and Junhui have to deal with. And this isn't always black and white. So as I go over these different taboos that appear in the show, it'll be up to you to decide whether you think these issues are external or internal in nature, because the show complicates this on purpose to make you think about it. The first taboo that comes up that would seem to be in the way of their love is their age gap. Ji-na is older than Junhui. Not by a lot really, but I guess enough for people to think it's kinda weird. During the first couple episodes, Ji-na is dumped by her current boyfriend and goes through a feeling of insecurity following this breakup. She knows she is getting older and therefore fears there is something wrong with her or that she isn't what she used to be, has lost some kind of value. But value to who? Ji-na is constantly getting pressured to get married or to find a boyfriend again, mostly from her mother, who, trust me, I will get to later on. And a middle-aged, career-oriented woman would seem to be losing value, as if women are supposed to measure their self-worth by their value as wives to men. Apart from Jin-ah being a part of this romance dynamic in this show, this is also a narrative that centers around her coming of age, or rather her acceptance of her age and her maturity, and the personal value she finds within that, separate from the outside perspective of society's idea of value. This development of Jin-ah's character really comes into play during the end of the show. But along the way, it's this expectation from society to get married and to be a wife that makes it so hard for her to find this personal value within herself. The taboo here is that the man should not be younger than the woman, which is like, who cares? But the show does a really good job at juxtaposing this with some of its other themes to identify double standards in society. Let's expand this and connect it with another huge theme of the show, which is sexual harassment in the workplace. Older men in power making unwanted advances and creating uncomfortable situations by making creepy requests of the younger female employees. Notice how the taboo of Jin-ah and Junhui's age gap runs parallel to this ongoing saga in the office, perfectly illustrating the double standard. Jin-ah is expected to comply with the inappropriate requests from older men at work who are like married with kids, and yet that's okay, but her being a little older than Junhui is like a huge taboo. It becomes clear as the show goes on that not just this age gap taboo, but also the taboo of social status, which I'll be getting to in a bit, are both deeply engendered. The show makes a point of weaving all of this into the fabric of the narrative really well, and if you didn't pick up on it through the actual plot and dynamics between the characters within the diegetic space of the show, not to worry, because the show will constantly beat you over the head with the "Sometimes It's Hard to Be a Woman" song on repeat. Jin-ah is known by her co-workers as Miss Tambourine. She's way too compliant with the boss's creepy requests, and notice how it's the younger women who are part of a younger generation who hold more progressive ideas about feminism and what women should have to tolerate in the workplace that are the ones that are calling her Miss Tambourine and telling her not to put up with any of this shit. Here, the significance of Jin-ah's age within this theme is given another layer, as not only does her age symbolize this devaluing of self-worth within the eyes of men and thus patriarchal society, it also disconnects her from the modern progressive ideology of the younger generation. If Jin-ah is older but not that old, but also not young, she is then literally and symbolically floating somewhere in between. This is represented perfectly through her relationships with one of her younger co-workers, somebody underneath her in rank, and an older woman who is one of her bosses above her in rank. Notice how in the show she seeks advice from both of them, showing this state of being in between being young and being older. Through this dynamic, Jin-ah and us as the viewers come to realize that both of these two generations have something of value to offer, but also each have their own limitations. It's also interesting to take note that although the older boss of Jin-ah is the one most entrenched within the system, she is the one who encourages Jin-ah to speak up the most, besides perhaps Junhui. And even though it's the younger women who hold these progressive values, they're still the ones that are most afraid to speak up or speak out due to the fear of losing their job, which shows their confinement within this system as well. On Junhui's side, as he is the younger one and has had to grow up very fast due to the loss of both of his parents, his mom dying and his dad leaving and abandoning him and his sister, he has had to, as his sister says in the show, grow up very fast. Even so, as you see in the show, he's actually extremely playful and childlike in a lot of ways. This notion of being grown up or acting like a child is really important with both of these characters, so pay attention to how each of them exhibit both of those kind of traits. There will be moments when Junhui is acting really grown up and Jin-ah seems to be really immature, and other moments where it's the reverse. The second taboo that is in the way of Jin-ah and Junhui's love is family. And now we introduce one of the biggest personifications of all these taboos in the series, Jin-ah's mother. Mother of the year, right? But seriously, let's break this down before we simply label her as terrible and unredeemable. On the most basic thematic level, Jin-ah's mother represents the extent to which all of these expectations of what a woman should be, as well as how important social status is in general, are still part of the modern reality. She represents the old school, the traditional values that are outdated and no longer fit alongside modern progressive ideas. Now, I'm assuming, and I'm sure my Korean viewers can confirm, that this character of the mother is meant to be more of an exaggerated, symbolic composite of the darkest and worst aspects of old school mentality, more so than a representation of what Korean mothers are actually like. Look, I'm not here to say that the mom is justified in the way she treats Jin-ah, but let's instead try to look at her through the lens of this theme and see how she really is a very tragic symbol of old school patriarchal tradition. She loves Jin-ah and really wants the best for her. I believe that. Unfortunately, her opinion of what's best is the issue. She pressures Jin-ah to be married because that's how she was raised to believe women could be happy and have a good life. Women are supposed to treat men right and do as they say. That's how to be a good wife, and this is all she knows. It's the only way she sees that her daughter can be happy, and it's really sad how that's how she views life. The show constructs the state of the mother being stuck in the past really well. While Jin-ah, and I believe like everyone else in the whole show whose bedrooms we see, sleep in a modern style bed, her mom and dad are the only ones that sleep on the floor in the traditional Korean fashion. I'm sure you guys also noticed their gender normative bedding as well, as the father has blue themed bedding and the mother has pink themed. Also notice that the mother, while she is incredibly outspoken and fierce throughout the show, crossing the proverbial line over and over again, she also adheres to the patriarchal dynamic of submitting to her husband. Even though she starts arguments and roasts her husband on many occasions, whenever he yells and puts his foot down, might as well use some more outdated terms, she obeys him and stops. And oftentimes it's like she doesn't even respect her husband unless he's asserting his male dominance in this form. For both Jin-ah and Junhui, the effect of their upbringing has a huge impact on who they are as adults. And I know, duh, but it's really important within the show. The fact that there's so much history between each of the two main characters' families is just another way in which the show complicates each one of its themes and refuses to make them black and white. Jin-ah's family, well, mostly her mother, is so obsessed with wanting to be associated with the higher class, while at the same time they have this history with a family that is of a lower social class. So there is this dynamic of family between families, as Jin-ah's mother sees Junhui and his sister as her own children, but at the same time there is this separation that always exists because she sees them as lower class, and that bond between them is immediately negated when it comes to considering Junhui as an actual partner for Jin-ah. The excuse that the mother has when she finds out about their relationship is that, oh, they're like family. Oh, they're like family. It's not appropriate because they're like family. It's almost like it's incest. But underneath that, it's really the difference in social class that is her main problem. Of course, being raised by a mother like this, Jin-ah's own personality and beliefs are deeply affected by this. And once again, here we see, in the form of family this time, another obstacle in the way of Jin-ah constructing her own identity. And of course, Junhui has his own issues with his family and his father abandoning him, and it really affects the way that he loves and what he brings to their relationship, just like Jin-ah's upbringing has that same effect. In this dynamic, the show creates this incredibly realistic dichotomy in each character that I think is pretty relatable to anyone. It's the process of growing up and wanting to separate yourself in terms of your identity from your parents, while at the same time accepting and realizing how much your parents' traits are part of you. So the last taboo or obstacle in the way of this romance, and perhaps the most deeply entrenched, is this issue of social class and classism. This is a theme that is extremely prevalent within Korean cinema recently. A dynamic of the upper class looking down upon the lower class and the resulting cultural friction this creates within Korean society. In this show, its commentary centers around Junhui, who I guess is of lower class. At least he is seen, mostly by Jin-ah's mother, as having no potential to reach a high enough standing in society. I mean, to be honest, I don't feel like Junhui was really portrayed as being particularly poor or lower class. I mean, he works in the same exact building as Jin-ah. I don't see how working in video game design is especially lower on the capitalist ladder than working for a coffee company. I think that the intention of the show might have been not so much to show Junhui as really lower class or really poor, but more so to use him and Jin-ah's mother's opinion of him as a way of making a commentary on how obsessed people can be with climbing the social ladder or being classist. When I first finished the show, I was extremely frustrated. I think what a lot of people had trouble with, besides the fact that they just didn't like the characters up until that point, was that the show seemed to be taking this trajectory towards them not working out. Everything seemed to be falling apart, and literally, right up until the last 10 minutes of the show, it seemed like they weren't going to be together. And then at the very end, there's the dramatic turn of events where he just comes out to see her and joins her, and oh, everything's great. And so again, I think the problem is that the last episode really didn't do that great of a job at building towards this eventual happy ending. If the entire last episode was all about them reconciling and learning to be together and learning how to be better for each other in their own relationship, then I think the ending would have been more credible. Instead, there is no conversation where they really work things out and fess up to a lot of the stuff that they've done to each other over this period of time. They just kind of have this cute conversation and then they're hugging and kissing, which makes the ending seem like this fucking cop-out, sell-out move by the show, as if they were going to make this brave statement about how sometimes relationships don't work out. Instead, they just sort of were like, oh no, let's not make everybody who loves romance shows angry. Let's just give them the happy ending. And that's what sucks the most, is that there was the potential for this amazing statement to be made, that sometimes love doesn't work out, that sometimes this person isn't the right one for you no matter how you feel about them. There's this theme of expectations being put upon Jin-ah throughout the entire show. And this would have worked in so well because there's not only the expectations within the show itself coming from different characters, but also the expectations from an audience that loves romantic dramas. And this would have been such a great meta commentary and statement about how not all relationships have happy endings, which again would tie in with this sense of realism that the show so carefully constructs up until this point. Alright, let me stop before I go on an even longer rant. Anyways, that's how I initially felt. But then I took some time to think, and here's what I got. It all began with some research. I was thinking, okay, there's gotta be something more to this. I know this show couldn't really have just done it like this with no intent other than a complete sellout move at the end. And I thought, okay, where could this symbolism be hidden? I thought back to one of the questions I had initially, which was, what the fuck? Jin-ah doesn't want to run away to the US, but then she runs away on her own right after? So on this note, I just want to put in this screenshot of a comment I saw from someone on Reddit discussing the ending, which had some really cool insight on this topic. I definitely think this has some validity, but I also think it's a little more complicated than what he's saying. Anyways, so I'm thinking she doesn't want to go to the US, but she's okay with going to... Wait, where did she go? Jeju Island. Okay, well, let me try and find out more about this place. So Jeju Island is a place that's well known in Korea and across Asia as a tourist destination. It's got beautiful landscapes and volcanoes and is actually the only self-governed province of Korea. Interesting when thinking of Jin-ah and her relationship with her mother. It is also known to be a pretty progressive place as well. And check out this paragraph describing the local women. Another interesting detail I found is that part of its reputation is that it does not have locked gates. If you think back to all the times that Jin-ah and Junwee go on dates or go out, there's this reoccurring motif of them saying goodbye. And in each of these shots, they are framed in such a way where that sliding door comes back into place with that bar across. Each time their goodbye is a little different, and this framing and this shot is also a little different. This is all a visual representation of things coming in between these two characters and their romance. So my half-baked conclusion is that Jeju Island is chosen by Jin-ah because it represents this possibility for freedom from the expectations of society. A place that is progressive, is self-governed, is known for its strong women, thought of as a romantic place, and is known for having no locked doors. It's a place where maybe, just maybe, in a different context, her and Junwee can find happiness and peace. Look, I'm just speculating here, I could be totally wrong. But if we build off that, the ending really falls into place. If we can look at all of their struggle as a symbolic commentary on society, meaning that Something in the Rain is really just trying to say, look at all the effects society can have on people in love. Look how it almost completely tore them apart and destroyed them to the point where they have to escape society itself to have a chance. Once again, as I've been saying throughout this review, it's not just the external forces of society that has caused their relationship so much trouble. It also has a lot to do with who they are as people and who the people around them are as people. But But once again, Jeju Island is this place where maybe they can separate themselves from the society that they've been conditioned by in order to work out some of their own personal issues. So for those of you who are like me that might have gotten frustrated with the characters a lot, what makes more sense? Being mad at two fictional characters that don't even really exist? Wouldn't it make more sense to get mad at patriarchy? Wouldn't it make more sense to get mad at classism, which is definitely not a Korean-only problem, but something that is applicable all over the world? If you look at this show as purely a romance drama at a surface level, then I think it's got some major issues. Unless you're one of those people that doesn't give a shit as long as you get the happy ending at the end. On the other hand, if you can see this show as a really well done social commentary executed through character study, then it is one of the best that I've seen in a long time. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and make sure to leave a comment and tell me what you think of the show, because I'm sure a lot of you have your own opinions. This is TwoTenEast, and I'll see you on the next video.